If you've ever approved a repair that looked affordable on paper and still watched your budget blow up later, you're not alone. For a lot of fleets, repair costs aren't killing the budget because of parts and labor. They're killing it quietly. Downtime, rentals, administrative time, lost revenue. All the stuff that doesn't show up on the invoice, but absolutely shows up on your balance sheet. So today, we're talking about why the cheapest repair often isn't cheap at all, and what fleet managers can do to get control without running themselves ragged. Fleet is one of those industries most of us don't plan on joining, but once you're in, it sticks. And that perspective matters, especially when you've seen the industry from more than one angle. Retail, OEMs, vendors, and then back to fleet. That's exactly what Demetra brings to this conversation.
So I sort of fell into fleet at the beginning of my career because, who goes to school thinking I am going to work in fleet? No, I thought I was going to be a diplomat. Needless to say, I found this company that was a remarketing company ahead of its time, and that founder took me under his wing. And what I learned very quickly is the fleet industry is very warm, very welcoming, and it also gave me the opportunity to learn all about various facets of automotive and specifically the fleet industry. And then I moved into other areas of automotive. So I worked with automotive retailers, I've worked with vendors like Edmunds, I did my own thing for a while, car manufacturers. And then I came back to fleet in my prior company. And what I noticed is I saw the same familiar faces and the same warm welcome. And it gave me a lot of perspective on the industry, what's happened, what's shifted. And that company was acquired. And right around that time or shortly thereafter, Service Up started becoming more and more familiar. I kept hearing about it more often. And the CEO happened to reach out to me.
When fleets talk about repair costs, the conversation usually starts and stops at parts and labor. But that's only part of the story. What really hurts budgets is everything wrapped around the repair. The time the vehicle is down, the routes that don't run, the customers that can't be serviced. And those costs add up fast.
You hit it. It's not just parts and labor. That's where people miss the mark, or they can miss the mark. Costs, there are a lot of costs that are often overlooked that contribute to the overall cost of the repair. Indirect fees, indirect costs, hidden costs. Things like downtime, fraud, lost revenue. If the vehicle is out of service, you can't deliver those packages. You can't service the client. So all of these pieces contribute to the overall repair cost versus just looking at the line item, the labor and the parts. Yes, that's a piece of it, but that's not the only piece. If you have a job that needs to be done and you need to rent another asset for your driver, that's going to cost you money. It's costing the driver time if they have to take the vehicle somewhere, pick up the vehicle somewhere. And I can think of a particular customer where this happened over time, and it wasn't just one repair. It was many repairs over time. We did a comparison. It was a national fleet that had presence in multiple markets. So we did a test in one market over another. One market continued to operate with their very cost-conscious shops that they were utilizing. And then the other market was working with us, and they were noting that, okay, some of the costs were a little bit higher with some of the shops, but they agreed to do the repair with our network. And what we found was, although the fleet was paying more for the repair, a little bit more for the repair in the test or the pilot market, they ended up saving about 30% more overall because the market that can continue to operate the way they were with their shop network that they had was waiting 1.5 to 2 weeks for the repair to even start because the shops that they were using were at capacity.
One of the most frustrating things for fleet managers is seeing wildly different costs for the same repair. It's the same vehicle, the same issue, but a totally different invoice. And more often than not, it's not about the wrench work. It's about transparency, consistency, and whether there's an actual repair strategy behind the scenes.
Lack of transparency, lack of industry standards, lack of consistency across the board. So fleet managers can at least begin to gain more control by having some sort of a repair strategy to begin with, planning. So having their designated shops, establishing rates up front with these shops, and then holding them accountable to specific SLAs. If the turnaround time for X repair is 3 days, measuring that and making sure that they're sticking to it. And then, I guess most importantly, is utilizing some sort of platform or some sort of technology that can capture all of the data, all of the analytics around the repair costs. Because without that data and the analytics, so if you're not measuring it, how can you make it better? How can you make the improvement?
Most fleets know preventive maintenance matters. The challenge is time, or staffing, and keeping vehicles on the road. Reactive repairs can feel faster in the moment. You fix what's broken and move on. But over time, that approach almost always costs more, especially when downtime turns into a constant surprise.
Not skipping out on preventative maintenance, first and foremost. Actually, I should start with having a plan, back to the repair strategy, and then these other pieces will follow suit. So don't skip the preventative maintenance. That could lead to more costly repairs later on. You can set a schedule and follow that schedule. Paying attention to telematics alerts, because that's what's going to tell you. That ties also into the preventative maintenance. That's going to detect failures before they become larger, or potential failures before they become larger repairs. Looking at trends over time. And after looking at trends, planning for the downtime. So if you're planning ahead and you're not being reactive, you're setting aside that time. You know when that vehicle is going to be out of commission, so you can plan for it. And then having that network already established of vendors that you need. So knowing where they are, what the costs are up front, having those relationships established. And then I think lastly is listening to your drivers, listening to their input, making sure that they're inspecting the vehicles.
Technology plays a bigger role in repairs than ever before, but it doesn't replace relationships. AI isn't asking how your kids are doing. Where it does help is removing friction, catching inconsistencies, giving fleet managers cleaner data so conversations with shops and partners are based on facts, not frustration.
So one of the big shifts we see is right now that we're seeing is this transition from a lot of manual logging and spreadsheets to automated real-time repair data. Telematics are providing insights, so maintenance isn't skipped, and the alerts and the notifications that are needed. AI is the buzzword. It has been the buzzword, but it's a useful tool. So AI is being used to do things like audit estimates and invoices, to compare the two, to ensure there aren't any inaccuracies, or to detect inflated costs. They're validating odometer readings and the accuracy of them. The AI is being used to help log repair data. So again, it's taking away these manual tasks so the fleet manager can focus on more important things. And then we also have the predictive analytics, right? Anticipating failures before they occur. So the predictive analytics is also becoming very, very prevalent for fleet managers. And if you're not looking into predictive analytics, I think you're missing the mark. Connecting the ecosystems as well. Connected ecosystems. So when all of the systems are talking to each other, again, you're going to avoid gaps. So from the telematics to the shop to whatever dashboard the fleet is using, interconnecting all of them. And then also driver coaching, I guess, would be my last piece. It's balance, right? So Yes, data and analytics can drive efficiency for the business, but the relationships are key to building that trust. So, for example, using data as a tool to perhaps address an issue is going to be key, but leveraging the relationship is what is going to get you to a solution. That's really important and shouldn't be neglected. Yes, AI is a tool. Data and analytics platforms are tools, but we have to look at the entire ecosystem. So yes, the relationships are primary. So looking at the relationships as partnerships to share goals and expectations, I think, are key, and leveraging these tools and looping in the shops to also have visibility into the data and what's going on, making sure that they understand the goals and expectations, I think, can help the shop or the vendor see the AI or the tools and the resources as beneficial versus as criticism. I think transparency and oversight is key.
Vehicles will always need repairs. Tires wear out, oil gets dirty, and things break. But surprise repair costs don't have to be a part of the job. If you feel like you're overspending, start by looking at your data or figuring out why you don't have it. Build a strategy and plan instead of react. And use technology to make better decisions, not just faster ones, because the cheapest repair is rarely the one that costs you the least. If this was helpful, hit like, subscribe, and check out the channel for more fleet tips and insights. And drop a comment letting us know what's the repair that keeps blowing up your budget lately. We'll check it out and see if we can cover it in our next episode.